Howdy, everybody. Good morning. It's Saturday, May 21st. Should be the quiet time of the football season, but it never is. There is no quiet time. We're working on the magazines here at Fantasy Sports Publications and Football Diehards, pumping out the content that you'll be enjoying throughout the summer, the Fantasy Football Pro Forecast, the draft book, the cheat sheets, Football Diehards magazines, all of them, everyone working diligently to get things in line for you and put it all together. The magazines are great. A lot of work goes into them. We've over time put a lot of effort into kind of dialing in the content. Like we realize it's a snapshot in time, right? We are just talking about something, how we're handling Deshaun Watson, and I'm going to talk about that here in a minute. Hope you're all doing well, but how we dial in and realize it's a snapshot in time. We use the website to kind of build on it, and we kind of use the magazines. You build a baseline of information, and it's a very enjoyable time. Kind of sitting here and going through things, getting people ready. Not everyone's here in the chats every week. Not everyone's on the internet, 24 hours a day like some of us here. Guilty. But it's a mix of trying to get people up to speed on all the things we missed, and just what an off season it's been. It seems silly. Feel like we say this all the time. Wow, it's been crazier than ever. Well, every year is crazier than ever, and this year is crazy as hell. I was talking on a live stream last night, and do you remember when Calvin Ridley got suspended for the season? Not really, right? It seems like a long time ago, and a lot has happened, and that was kind of like the kickoff to a series of events and trades and news that's continuing and ongoing. Anyway, thanks everyone for coming. Hi, Scott Kobe. Hi, Michael Berry. Kadarius Toney, if traded. I'll get into all this. Let's do this now, Michael. I think Kadarius Toney's not getting traded. I felt like maybe he was for a little while. I thought going into the draft they were open to it. It seems like all that talk has kind of cooled a little bit. I think the Giants would have loved to trade, let's say Saquon Barkley, but has a $7 million guaranteed contract. No one's going to trade for him, and maybe that's next year talk. And we'll see with Toney. We'll see if they can figure it out. I think I've been kind of battling with him in best ball drafts. He just presents himself at a time where I say, wow, there's some upside here. And that upside we saw in the Dallas game last season, right? 190 receiving yards on 10 catches or whatever. We also saw him punch a guy in the head and get kicked out of the game. So a little bit of a wild card there, man. It's so I like a lot what Toney brings. I'm hopeful that some of these pieces in the Giants offense, assuming he stays, and I don't think, I don't think he's going to get traded. There are obviously some receiver needy teams that we would love to see add high-end talent. I'm looking at you, Green Bay Packers. The Atlanta Falcons still have needs, although they've been adding pieces throughout the draft. And, as we get closer to the season, they'll probably do more. So maybe that's one of the things they'll look at. So I don't think he'll go anywhere. The hope is that Brian Dable can turn this offense into something a little more than it has been, right? And they've made some improvements on the offensive line. Obviously, Evan Neal, drafting him is a big step. He is a big man. No pun intended there. So we'll see. Honestly, if I thought he was going to go somewhere, I'd like to believe he'd go to a team that has a really strong need for a huge playmaking threat and the quarterback to get the job done. And as I start checking through those boxes, hello, Green Bay. So, but I think that's going to be, from a fantasy perspective, that's what we do. We're like a hammer, and every issue is a nail, and we're out there looking for, openings. So just like, in the draft, we were hoping Houston. Breece Hall, there's a huge opening there. And of course, Breece Hall will be fine in New York, but Dameon Pierce might be fine in Houston just based on the potential opportunity. So our personnel desires tend to be fulfillments of our own fantasy-related fantasies sometimes. So hopefully, I think he's going to stick around, Michael, in the end game. If they do move him, let's find him a good place. Again, thanks for coming by. If you haven't already, subscribe to the YouTube channel. I do this every Saturday at noon. Sometimes bring guests on and we talk about some things, always taking your questions. I know, you're getting tired of hearing it, but we are going to start doing some mock drafts in this YouTube room, and it's probably going to be coming as we get through the magazines, and we'll bring some of you in as, people who are regulars here. We'll give you opportunities to jump into some of these drafts with us and listen to us talk smack about your picks, and we'll get some of the people that come in here. Matthew Whitfield is in here often. Happy birthday, Matthew, if you're not already here. And Scott, who has been taking part in some of the magazine drafts and doing some contributions there. So we'll have some of those people in, and we'll do a little instant analysis on the fly. Emo Catholic and I have done this in the past, and we'll do this again. So again, hit the subscribe button, the notification bell, hit the like button if you like what you're hearing. If you hate me, dislike button works just as well. Go ahead. I'm not afraid of that. Hit the Football Diehards website. A lot of going on there, constant stream of news. And some of the items, some interesting or at least topical things today. The Deshaun Watson situation seems to be gaining some momentum. I want to see what day this is that they're going to. So for the Colts, Michael Berry, the T.Y. Hilton, they have not given up on him yet. He's still in the mix there. They're talking about him. I haven't heard anyone else expressing interest, but the reporting is a couple teams have. We'll see where that comes. The Athletic is reporting that, Jeff Howe. So we'll see. And I've heard nothing about Julio going there. I mean, other than, again, kind of the semi-wishful thinking. Obviously, the quarterback situation. We want to connect these things, right? As fantasy managers, things that we know and we've seen in the past that were previously successful. I think teams want to do that too. Like Will Fuller is out there waiting for Cleveland to call him. I'm going to talk about Deshaun Watson here in a minute, but these are the kind of connections we're making. I don't know that teams are making that, at least in the case of the Colts just yet. But T.Y. Hilton is somebody they've discussed bringing back. That they haven't done it yet, kind of to me tells you something. This may be I think we're at the point in free agency where we may not see a lot of players signed until training camp starts, right? They're waiting for injuries or openings, and opportunities may be better for them than they are at this point. We've got like one round of mini camps coming up here, kind of mandatory sessions through the middle of June, and then everyone will be off until training camp start. And I think that's when we'll start seeing some of these guys that are still floating around, and whether they go back to their old teams or go to new teams. My thoughts about Cam Akers for 2022. It's interesting how his evolution has gone. If you've been in the best ball rooms drafting, throughout the course of time, early on, he was going very high. I think the first best ball draft I did, he was a late first round pick, which I thought was crazy at the time, and which now he's dialed way back. Maybe back too much. Maybe now I'm getting more interested. I find myself in recent drafts getting more shares of him. Let me check his current best ball ADP at least and see where we're at on that. Yeah, if he's going off the 39th player overall, let's see where he is among running backs. I mean, I think, maybe that's not like as crazy good as I thought. I just find myself in positions to draft him more. He's the 15th running back off the board. He's going after Saquon Barkley. I might like Cam Akers a little better than Saquon Barkley. He's going off after Antonio Gibson. I definitely like him better than Antonio Gibson. It's going off after Alvin Kamara, who I still like, and I think you're getting great value as running back 11. But obviously the cloud hanging over his head, the legal issues. So the thing about Akers is he came back last year from an injury much more quickly than anyone anticipated, right? It's a serious injury, happened in July, the torn Achilles. That he was back on the field at the end of the season is pretty remarkable. That he wasn't fantastic, I guess that shouldn't be surprising, right? He's coming off a really serious injury. That he was on the field at all and that he was getting the volume he was getting. He was going against some pretty tough teams. The per carry average wasn't great to close out the season. But I don't think we should, what I was hoping for is people would look at that and the price would dip even more than it has, right? That people would be disappointed. Wow, he came back and he wasn't fantastic. And so, I'm not getting as much of a discount as I want, but I do think he's going to be a high volume play. Darrell Henderson's still there. They have also added some pieces, in the draft, Kieran Williams, how do you say that? So there are some other players there, but I don't think anyone to threaten him. So I do like him, if you get him as a running back too, I'd feel pretty good about that, but the later the better. And there are other players, there are a lot of players. I should say this, I would say the players going ahead of him. I should say the players going after him that I'd be just as happy having. David Montgomery, Leonard Fournette is still going after him. I have Leonard Fournette ranked as a running back 1. I'd say the same with James Conner going well after him. Josh Jacobs, I'd be fine taking. Ezekiel Elliott, I know there's reason to be concerned about him, but volume isn't necessarily one of those things. So, touchdown equity is there. So there are a lot of backs going after him. So I think what I'm doing is I'm drafting different positions when I'm in in the mix for acres. I'm tending to look at different directions. So that's probably why I'm not getting as many shares of him. I don't think it's a bad price, but I think there's a lot of guys after him. And if you've caught me on this live stream before, my feelings just in general on this year when I'm drafting has been, I'm not a driver of cars. I haven't for a long time, but I remember potholes, right? And you want to swerve around those things. And I feel like in fantasy drafts right now, in the best ball drafts that I've been in, and some of the real drafts now that we're doing the magazine drafts, whenever I find myself facing a pothole, a spot in the road that I don't care for, or a player I'm not that interested in is staring me in the eye, there's a lot of room to maneuver and swerve around and other lanes and alternative routes that I could take. So if I don't like a player, I'm happy taking other guys. I think that's better. And not that I'm not taking, against taking acres. I'm just going a different route. I'm getting maybe my running back earlier and then go wide receivers for a couple picks and then running back a little later. So the Dynasty Vipers Network wants to know who is the running back to target late in drafts and why is it Sony Michel? Because it's Tyler Algier. Everyone knows this. I'm supposing, is that you, Matt? Look, I think Sony Michel, any of the cheaper, the cheaper I'm getting a Dolphins running back, the happier I am. I like the one named Raheem Mostert, just because he's most familiar with the system. But the Mike Daniels, or I think it was the offensive coordinator there, was really talking up Michel and what he brings, and I don't disagree with any of that. I just don't think he's I think there's like two people ahead of him right now, and I think one of them is Mostert, just because he's familiar with the system, but also Mostert coming off injury, so we'll have to see where he's at as the season draws near. So it might be that, but there's a lot of late round running backs, a lot of free square running backs out there, basically. And by free square, I mean guys you're getting very late in drafts who can give you a little something, give you a little something to, at least to hang your hat on. And some of them are going to be rookies, and Tyler Algier's one in Atlanta, in case you didn't know. Big-bodied back. They just got rid of Mike Davis. Cordero Patterson, they're already talking about using a receiver more than at running back. We'll see if that plays out, but still they need to kind of between the tackles hammer. Algier kind of fits that bill. So he's a player to watch for sure, I think, in upcoming drafts. So there you have that. I wanted to get on Deshaun Watson. I've been heading that direction here. Let's talk about it a little bit and what it might mean. The process seems like it's beginning. And by that, I mean the NFL met with Watson this week. They're going to meet with him again. His lawyer, Rusty Hardin, believes they will come to an initial decision in June or July. If that initial decision is we're not suspending him, that's going to be the end of it, right? He's not going to appeal, and the commissioner isn't going to do anything. So they are investigating still. I don't know if it's going to work in his favor. HBO, let me see when this is on. HBO, Real Sports, Tuesday night is going to interview a number of the accusers. The 22 accusers are going to do interviews with Soledad O'Brien on television, and Watson's lawyer is concerned about it and how it's going to look, because we know how it's going to look. Not good for him. And a lot of times we'll see, like when video or we see the put faces on some of the victims or whatever, and not making any judgments here, like if you're all out there saying, man, I'm not drafting Deshaun Watson, he's a scumbag, I hate him. Okay, you're welcome to do that. But there are plenty of people out there. I'm trying to just serve the needs of everybody. So if you're not a Watson drafter, that's fine. I've been drafting him some very late or getting late shares because, the upside is there. He's a top 5 quarterback, and the situation will get worked out however it gets worked out. He'll face his punishment. But the process needs to be this. They come to the initial decision, and then they take that and they come up with whatever that punishment's going to be. And then he can appeal it, and Roger Goodell can go through it. So, the Browns and everybody involved with like a, decision as they are heading into the season. The teams he's going to play would like decisions, to know what quarterback they're going to face. And Jacoby Brissett is standing by. Or will it be Baker Mayfield? That's in the news as well, that teams are in a holding pattern. In particular, the Seahawks and Panthers might still be interested, but their interest is going to depend on how much they have to pay him. How much they have to pay him depends on what the Browns do, right? If the Browns cut him, they're on the hook for his entire salary, and then a team can come in and get a better deal. Undoubtedly, the Browns are going to owe him $18 million. So if you trade for him, you got to trade for that contract, right? But if you wait till he gets cut, you don't have to pay that contract. The Browns will pay it. So, and maybe that's part of the decision on trade. Maybe a trade will happen and the two teams will say, hey, we've come up with an equitable, in our minds, way to split the cost on Baker Mayfield. Or maybe the Browns find out that they're going to be without Deshaun Watson longer than they thought, or for some period of time. And even if they want to start Jacoby Brissett, maybe it would be in their best interest to keep Baker Mayfield around, even though he's not going to be very happy, and there's some bridges to rebuild there, clearly. He's not happy with them. They've obviously not as impressed with him. But it's, also easy to forget he was a pretty good quarterback a couple years ago. I mean, he led that team to a great deal of success when they hadn't had any. So anyway, Seattle and Carolina still lurking in the weeds there. So Dennis Bennett, a rookie in the Fantasy Cares Eliminator. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that Fantasy Cares Eliminator. John Bosch has put that out there, the Fantasy Cares. It's a really weird system. And Dennis Bennett wants to know about quarterbacks in that. Man, if you're drafting any of those and you're seeing like teams draft 2 quarterbacks, then 4 defenses, and then 5 kickers, then another defense. I mean, it's really a weird setup. In that, you want to have consistent scoring every week. The low score gets kicked out every week. I have actually won the Eliminator in the last couple of years, won a Eliminator coming in fairly high. Last year I did fairly well. I wasn't drafting in past years like people are drafting this year, so I'm drafting a little more like they are. And I understand the reasoning behind that. The defenses are going to be on the field. You have a whole team, right? If you have a player who gets hurt, or 2 players that get hurt at a position, you're out of luck at that position. You're doomed. You could start 8 defenses. Defense is always going to score some points. Are you going to be in the bottom of the scoring, every week? I mean, so it's an interesting thing. But which rookie quarterback not named Pickett gets the most playing time? To put a fine point on Dennis's question, the easy answer is 0 of them. The next answer is Desmond Ridder of them. It sounds like Malik Willis is a year away, right? I mean, obviously, unless something happens, and injuries could change all this. I mean, so we're assuming good health for everyone involved. I guess Desmond Ridder and Sam Howell are the next 2 guys up in Carolina, but Panthers may still get Baker Mayfield, so question marks there. And it probably means it's going to be somebody completely off the board that we are totally not thinking about. That's kind of my view, Dennis. I think Desmond Ridder, I kind of have a thing where I think Marcus Mariota could, come back and maybe resurrect his career a bit. But if he doesn't, Desmond Ridder is standing by. And I don't know that we have a ton of evidence saying Marcus Mariota, other than he's been really good as a backup and he's looked really good in brief appearances. We're thinking the same of Mitchell Trubisky, though, right? And maybe, with Kenny Pickett there now, we don't see much Mitchell Trubisky either. So there we go. Few 2 for you. I like that. Would I trade Akers for Montgomery? I don't know that I would do that. I mean, I like Montgomery and I like getting him a little cheaper in drafts, but I think if I had Akers, I'd be fine holding on to him. It's a good offense, right? I don't know how good the Bears offense is going to be. Where do I rate DK Metcalf for draft, redraft, and dynasty? I think you're seeing DK Metcalf in redrafts going about the 4th round. I think that's pretty good value for him. I mean, as much as we're worried about the quarterback situation, even the worst quarterbacks have some production. So, there's hopes there. Seahawks want to run the ball, but I mean, Metcalf has been consistently pretty damn solid, right? 900 yards a year, 29 touchdowns over the course of time, including 12 last year. We saw brief moments where Geno Smith and he seemed to be in sync when Russell Wilson was out for a little bit. But I don't know, and Geno has the lead going right now. I think their desired outcome is Drew Lock being the starter, and he's got a big arm, and maybe that works in Metcalf's favor. For Dynasty, he's a buy for me right now, and I would be offering cheap. I'd be looking to lowball people a little bit on him, and look at the other teams in your league. Look for positions of need where you have a surplus, and attack them on Metcalf and buy him low. And if you have him, I think he's a hold for that very same reason. So there we have that. Pedro Resto, my friend. Would I draft Aaron Jones with my 13th pick to be my running back 1 over Javonte Williams or Nick Chubb, given Aaron Jones is ranked 27th overall? So I like those other two better than I like Jones, but Jones is growing on me a little bit. The concern with me with Jones, and you could say the same with Nick Chubb. There's another back there, right? And well, you say the same for Williams now as well. Um, so there's a reasonable argument to be made that Aaron Jones. I mean, who's been the biggest goal line weapon in Green Bay in recent years? Has been Devontae Adams. 2 years ago, I think, what he had 17 touchdowns. Almost all of his touchdowns came in the red zone. Could you see that maybe Aaron Jones kind of taking over that role as the receiving portion of that red zone offense? I think there's going to be a lot of AJ Dillon. We saw it start last year. I think it continues this year, but Aaron Jones is not going away. So if you've got a thing for Jones, I'm not against that. I'm taking Williams, then Chubb, then Jones in that order. But man, Aaron Rodgers. Thinking Aaron Rodgers also is going to come out here with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder and having something to prove now that he's stuck in the position he's in is not crazy out of line either. So I hope that helped, Pedro. And of course, Scott Kobe always asks, the Cats are fine. And I think James Cook does not play a big role, but he plays a role. And I think that's the thing, Scott. They foreshadowed this with their pursuit of J.D. McKissick. They wanted that piece. Hello, Andrea. Nice to see you today. They wanted this. They wanted that piece, right? And so, I mean, I don't want to go overboard on this, and I think they're fine with them Singletary. He's been talking to people who cover the team daily. I think the ideal plan is Devin Singletary to continue playing the same role or continue getting his workload similar to what he got down the stretch. He was very effective for them. They realize this, but they do want a receiving component. So, I mean, they want somebody who can make some plays out of the backfield. So we'll see James Cook, but I don't know if it'll be a big role. I mean, I think it'll be a decent role. I just don't think it'll be a big role unless things are going south or they have a lot of negative game scripts. But anyway, let me just wrap up the Watson before we get carried away with more questions. It seems like we'll have some resolution, heading into August. And maybe we'll get pretty good hints of it before then. And remember, if a suspension is handed down, he can appeal it. We've seen people appeal successfully in the past, including Ben Roethlisberger. Zeke Elliott did not, but, kind of similar circumstances where, there were issues, but no criminal issues. So we'll see. I'm still not against drafting him as my second quarterback late and drafting a steadier guy earlier or even after him if I want to reach up a little bit for Watson. So I'm good with all that. And just interesting, to see how this offense, I mean, it's going to be a much different offense, whether Watson is, depending on Watson's presence, right? I mean, they brought in other quarterbacks who will play more along the lines of Watson and Jacoby Brissett, who's a little bigger, but, similar guy. I like in the fantasy cares eliminator, I'm not taking Watson, but if you did, you'd want to make damn sure you had Jacoby Brissett, right? So Matthew Michaelberry, sorry if I've talked about. What is your opinion of waiver wire additions in terms of using rolling versus continuous? I'm considering switching to Fab. So, I think in general, Fab works better for people. I think more people, that's what I see more of. I would prefer not doing that. I usually wait until, the first come, first serve portion of waivers happen. I'm not there working the waiver wire early because my work schedule doesn't permit as much and I'm in way too many leagues. So I'm kind of an outlier here, I'll say, in that regard. I would probably say, Fab seems to be the most popular. I think just like, auction drafts. I mean, aside from the fact they take a long time, I mean, they're really fair. You have a chance at every player, depending on what you're going to want to spend. And there's a level of, strategy involved in, are you a big spender early? Do you hold your powder, keep your powder dry until later in the season? So if you really get in trouble, there's, two schools of thoughts on that. My fantasy sports radio co-host on Football Diehards, Mike Dempsey, he will spend every nickel he has as fast as he has, if he feels it's, a good opportunity. So I tend to hold back a little bit. I want to save something to be able to drop the hammer when I need a guy the most. So, but determining when you need that's all part of it. So I'm kind of a fan of the free agent bidding. So the Fab would be my approach. Some interesting talk today or last couple of days. George Kittle's out making the media rounds, and he was been asked obviously about the quarterback situation. And he talked about Trey Lance versus Jimmy Garoppolo, who is still there. And I hold the fab too. I think that's my approach. And then what do you do though, Andrea, when you're like holding the bag at the end of the year? Do you feel like, damn it, I wish I would have spent on this guy or that guy? Sometimes I have the regrets, but mostly I like to be able to drop the hammer late in the season. But I guess getting back to the Kittle things. So he's talking a little bit about which quarterback he preferred. And it's an interesting talk. He thinks Trey Lance has a fantastic ceiling, right? Like a huge ceiling, but there's something to be said for experience. And I kind of agree with that part. So I felt like last year, with Jimmy G, I mean, I felt like he was going to start unless Trey Lance came in and blew them away. And obviously Trey Lance didn't come and blow them away. He wasn't quite ready. And so they've invested all that draft capital in Trey Lance, and you would think they would be in a big hurry to get him on the field. But also there was some pressure on them. They hadn't been in the playoffs for a little while. Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. I mean, not that they were on the hot seat because they have pretty long contracts, but they needed to get back to the playoffs. And so, do you have a playoff ready team? Do you risk that with the quarterback who maybe isn't playoff ready? And I mean, I know I could hear the arguments out there that Jimmy G has not proven to be tremendously playoff ready. I mean, but he has taken them to the playoffs, and he's taken them deep into the playoffs. So I think he's won 70% of the games he started for San Francisco. So the fact that he's not gone, I think it makes it interesting. Where are you all drafting Trey Lance? Put that in the comments. And I still see him going fairly early. I think right now, he's going to be the starter, and they're going to roll with it. But it is interesting. He's still a bit of an unknown to all of us. You hear mixed things, and I think hearing George Kittle frame it like the way he framed it, he has. Let me bring up the quote for me so I don't misquote him. Trey Lance has an insane ceiling, but that he needs the experience that comes from playing. So does Kittle prefer Lance, or would he prefer Garoppolo? And he says, I'm glad I'm not the head coach of the 49ers. That's all on Coach Shanahan. I'll give you both ways. Jimmy G, awesome in the huddle, great leader, directs guys. People go to attention when he's talking. He's got a quick release. He knows the offense. I've been to 2 NFC championship games. He knows what he's doing. Trey Lance can run, extend plays, does all the play action stuff, incredible, can throw the ball 70 yards. I don't know. It's a toss-up for me. Well, if it's a toss-up for him, it's a toss-up for me as well. But we saw, mostly Jimmy G at the helm, a great value for Deebo Samuel. George Kittle has had success. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I think it's going to be Lance. I think if you're out there drafting Lance, that's who I would be drafting as well if I'm drafting a San Francisco quarterback. But if you're doing that like in the Fantasy Cares Eliminator, or it'd be even in best ball, it wouldn't hurt to ensure that pick a little bit if you want to take Jimmy Garoppolo as a flyer, a late rounder. Dennis, when are you backing up? How many quarterbacks are you going to have, Dennis, in the Fantasy Cares Eliminator? That's the question. How many defenses are you going to have? Is anyone else in an eliminator this year? It's an interesting. The drafts have been very interesting. Again, I want to thank you all for coming today. Subscribe to the Football Diehards YouTube channel if you're not already subscribed. Hit the like button if you have not already hit it. Hit the dislike button if you're tired of me. You'd like me to go away. I won't go away, but you can hit the dislike button if you like as well. Go to footballdiehards.com. All kinds of great stuff there. Tons of content going up all the time. We're dialing in the rankings, so check out the rankings. The rankings matrix. Go up to the tab at the top. And yes, Scott Covey is in an eliminator with me. Scott, how many quarterbacks are you going to end up with? But hit the cheat sheets tab if you go to the site right now. Hit the rankings matrix. We'll be updating throughout the weekend again, but the rankings have been updated, and you'll find everything you need there. Tons of good stuff there as well throughout in terms of news, rookie content, et cetera, and more to come as we get close to the season. Scott's going to take 3 quarterbacks and 3 defenses. I'm going to probably take 4 in a lot of these leagues, 4 defenses. Again, the argument being if players get hurt or whatever and you're missing guys, defense is never going to be totally hurt, right? It's not one guy. It's like 11 guys, and they have extras of them, and they score points, the unit. So you just got to be the bottom scorer. But you do need some upside. You do need some high-end play. So it's an interesting league. You start multiple quarterbacks. I think zero to 8 defenses, and I think 0 to 8 kickers. And I think those positions are pretty important, more so than you would expect. So fun stuff, everybody. Check them out if you get a chance. So if you can't find them, go to my Twitter feed at Football Diehard, and you'll find links to the sign up there, and you pick someone you want to play with and make a small donation to charity. It's a good time. You want to pick a quarterback, and who would you want? 10 teams. So you're going to see in 12-team leagues, you're going to see quarterbacks start going off in the third round. That quarterback's going to be Josh Allen. He'd be the quarterback I want. So if you kind of extrapolate that out to, to more of a 10-team thing, you're looking at maybe the fourth round. I think that's reasonable. If I miss out on him, I'm fine waiting a little bit, and you'll find going a round or two later beyond that, maybe depending on who you're drafting with. The Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert start going off the board. I'd be fine waiting a little later, getting Jalen Hurts. I get a lot of Tom Brady a fair amount later. Matthew Stafford goes, I see him going to double digits in some 12-team leagues. So again, I think this year I'm finding that you can get a wide range. There's a lot of different approaches you could follow, and I'm pretty comfortable with all of them. So if you have a preference on quarterback, for me, drafting a little bit later, waiting until closer to the double-digit rounds. Another tactic you use is maybe reach up for a little bit, like on a guy like Trey Lance or Deshaun Watson that you think is going to play or has upside. And I think Trey Lance is maybe the really good example of this. A guy the 49ers obviously put a lot of stock into, but there's still some questions about him, and you could draft after him, a guy that has job security and is going to be on the field every week. Derek Carr is a quarterback I can wait on and feel really comfortable with now that he's with Devontae Adams. So a lot of different approaches to quarterback, Brian. And I think in a 10-team league, you got a lot of flexibility for sure. So I wouldn't be going too early. If you want Josh Allen, you might have to jump in early in round 4 or, to make sure you get him. And getting him, to me, he's the head and shoulders above the others. But we've seen Patrick Mahomes produce at a super high level, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Justin Herbert. I don't want to leave him out because I think, I rank them Allen, Mahomes, Herbert at the top of the heap for me. I have Lamar Jackson next, and he's got to rebound. Maybe you can get him a little cheaper because he did disappoint people last year. That's always something to keep in mind when you're drafting players, is what they did last year. Not so much because you're basing your value on that, but a lot of people do, right? And they remember what people who got burned are going to be, diving back on him or dialing back on him. So it makes things interesting. But I'm curious to see, you have basically quarterback, I don't know if it's competitions, but questions for San Francisco. I think it's going to be Trey Lance. Seattle, I think it's going to be Drew Lock unless they make a trade. Wouldn't put anything past happening in Carolina, whether they acquire Baker Mayfield at some point or Sam Howell beat out, Sam Darnold. Look, Sam Darnold has not been good, right? So throughout the course of his time in the NFL, has just never lived up to the expectations. So if somebody else came in, think back a number of years ago when a later round, or not a later round, but a third round pick named Russell Wilson came into Seattle, and they had a big money free agent named Matt Flynn, and Russell Wilson beat him out, and the rest is history. And that team went on to great success in part because they had a young quarterback on his rookie contract that they could build around and pay up at other positions. Do I think Zeke, Andrea wants to know, is going to come back this year? Is he going second or third round? Is he going in second or third round, 12th team? I've seen him go. He's starting to grow a little bit. I know Mike Dempsey, my radio co-host, is very excited about him. I kind of am too. You can look at some of the numbers that are floating around out there if you look on your Twitter. I think, who was it? Brian Barnhill on ESPN just did a pretty in-depth piece, statistically making the argument against Zeke, building on, what we saw. Look, last year we complain and bitch and moan, but he was a top 10 running back playing with a partially torn PCL down the stretch, right? And we know Tony Pollard is there. Barnhill argues, that basically Pollard is a more efficient, more effective back. Well, he may be, but, there's other factors involved, right? And it's Bill Barnwell, I want to say. I say Brian Barnhill. What the hell is that? Bill Barnwell. But that maybe the investment says they're going to keep playing Zeke. So I'm pretty comfortable drafting him in the third round or as my second running back. If I see him in the fourth round, I'm more excited about it. But I think I think it's easy to overlook how good he was last year. because it wasn't as good as we hoped for, right? But still good. So uh, yeah, I'm kind of in on him right now. I think second round's a little early for me, but third is starting to be where I look for him. I usually I see Saquon Barkley going off a little ahead of him, Andrea, a lot, and that's kind of my signal. Like if I want him, I got to go. But if I miss out on Zeke, there's a handful of guys I'm super happy with as well, including Josh Jacobs, who I know they didn't pick up his option in Las Vegas, but maybe that's more a sign that they're about to run the wheels off him. I mean, they don't have a long-term investment. Use the hell out of him. So, and some other players I like as well. Who do I think will get the majority of the touches in Seattle in the backfield? I think it'll start out as Rashad Penny will be the starter unless something really shocking happens in training camp with Kenneth Walker. Don't think Chris Carson is coming back, but we'll find that out. Seattle's behaving as if he's not. I think that's something you can kind of you look at teams and you say, wow, they're concerned about a situation like the Saints with Alvin Kamara. I'm a little concerned about the legal situation. The Saints aren't acting like they're concerned at all, are they? I mean, they're not adding pieces. They didn't add anybody in the draft. They're kind of going status quo. Or in Seattle, they went out and invested significant draft capital in a high-end rookie running back, basically the second, or some people had him first, but mostly the second back in the board. So, all that said, Rashad Penny, we should remember, was down the stretch last season the best back in football. He ran for 200 yards more than any other running back over the final 6 games. He had 5 touchdowns over that span. He's a pretty good receiver. So my default is, as excited as I am that Kenneth Walker is there, is that Rashad Penny remains the starter until further notice, right? But we know how that goes in Seattle. So what I'm seeing mostly, and it's starting to change a little bit, is Kenneth Walker is going earlier in drafts, so I'm taking the value on that. Taking the value and drafting the cheaper component, which is right now Rashad Penny, but that could change as people get more in line. I mean, I talked to Bob Cantata from the Seattle Times and kind of said, that fantasy world is all over Kenneth Walker thinking he's going to be the starter. Why do they think that? And he said, I don't know. They should not think that. So that's someone that covers the team on a daily basis. We'll see if, he gives us reason to believe that, but right now we should probably believe that. So I think it'll be Rashad Penny, but like we know his history there, it's not been great in terms of his health, etc. I'm injury agnostic. I think people can get hurt at any time, so I'm not like calling him injury prone, but the history is not good. Pedro, fan of really giving kickers and defenses a great deal of thought, as sometimes victories can come from a defensive kicker. Thoughts? How soon do you invest in a D or kicker? I kind of watch the board a little bit. Like, I don't necessarily need the first guy. I draft with a lot of people who do. Slim Jim Phantom of, a colleague at Sirius Radio will always, make sure he gets Justin Tucker because he thinks that's going to, for the very reason you say, he thinks that's going to win him some games, right? I tend to wait and I tend to play the waiver wire a little bit. I only draft one at the position, throughout the year. So I know I'm going to have to make a change at some point. So I usually draft guys with late buys. This year it's going to be a lot of Ryan Suckup. I mean, the Buccaneers have a week 14 bye. So I don't have to deal with it until week 14, assuming there's no injury. But I am willing at times. So I usually go the last 2 rounds. I will jump up on a defense. I think there are enough kickers out there that I can, get a super good kicker. I'm mostly just looking at the offenses. I want, high-powered offenses, but maybe some that struggle at the end zone a little bit. I don't think there's, anything wrong with looking for that. Like, I love Tyler Bass as a kicker, but damn, that offense scores a lot of touchdowns. Am I going to get behind the extra points? So maybe I'm looking for kickers that have a few more attempts. And so yeah, I don't overdo it, Pedro, and maybe, not to the degree you do, and maybe more so on defense than a kicker. But you're not wrong. I mean, those might impact the outcome of some games. So putting some thought into it, but waiting until the appropriate time. Don't overdraft. And you probably know your league better than I do. But in most leagues it's the last 2 rounds. People kind of go into all free-for-all. So if I feel like there's one of those components that I want a lot more than any other, I'll jump up to the 3rd from the last round or a round ahead of that and work that way. Pedro also, Dobbins and ETN should be interesting running back number 2s as per previous Zeke discussion. I agree with that. And also, if you're like waiting a little bit, I mean, those guys are available a little bit later. So if you want to take your first running back in the 1st round or in the second round, early in the second round, and get a receiver in the first round. But if you come out around, let's say you head into round 4 with 2 high-end wide receivers and a running back, and you want to wait, or even you want to go push that further out in the 5th round, and there's still running backs out there that you could feel reasonably comfortable with. And Elijah Mitchell's a guy that's going like 5th or 6th round. I mean, I realize the history of running backs under Kyle Shanahan has not been that they're super productive back-to-back years. The last guy that led a Shanahan team in rushing back-to-back years was Devonta Freeman in 2015 and 16. Since then, it's been every year a fresh face. But Elijah Mitchell looks like he's going to go to position. I take a shot at that. Younger is better. Well, younger is better, but it's I don't think. I mean, it's not like Rashad Penny's old, and it's not like he has a ton of mileage on him, right? He doesn't. He hasn't played that much, so yeah. I mean, I'm not against Walker. I'm more for cheaper, right? So whichever one's cheaper is probably the one I'll have more of. But right now, again, I mean, if you're sitting here and you're thinking it's going to be Kenneth Walker for sure, that's not what the people in Seattle think. They don't see it that way, and they don't see it that way because Rashad Penny was really good down the stretch. So if you think that was a mirage and you feel like, I mean, it's not, neither one of them are going overly priced. So I think at that point, if you're waiting to the 5th, 6th, 7th round to draft that running back, and you have a hunch, go ahead and play your own hunch on that. I think at some point you'll see both of them will have workload. So there you have it. If I had Dalvin Cook, when should I think about trading him off due to his age, wear and tear, etc. this year, next year? Boy. I mean, if that's your concern this year, right? Because he's not getting any younger, and it's been an ongoing theme a little bit with him. I would want to hold on to him this year myself. I'm intrigued to see how they're going to use him. This is a new offense coming in. They've used him a certain way in the past. They've been a very run-heavy team. They're going to be less run-heavy this year, and we've already heard talk of him lining up at wide receiver on occasion. So, in certain circumstances. So I like, if you're looking to trade, it sounds like I'm guessing a few for you. If you're talking about it, you're giving it some consideration. And so if you thought you could get a high-end return for him, I would do it. If you think like maybe you can parlay some of this talk about the new offense and maybe an exciting new aspects of his role, and you can sell the notion that this is the Rams offense coming to town and it's going to be a lot different and a lot better, and Cook is going to benefit from that, and you're comfortable moving him because you're asking that, then I'd see what I could get back. And if I could get reasonable return back, yes, and it would have to be really good return. Mitchell scares Pedro. He doesn't scare me at the price, but it's a little bit of concern. I mean, it seems like in San Francisco, next man up is such a thing because we see it all the time, right? Their guys just come out of nowhere and get the job done. So that is a concern there. But Mitchell was really good when he was playing last year. I think he surprised them. If you talk to people who cover the team on a daily basis, there's maybe a little more to it. For example, talked to one reporter there who told me that basically the Trey Sermon pick, that was a scouting department pick. Coaches liked Elijah Mitchell. Well, once the season started, who has the control? The coaches. So the fact that they drafted another running back this year, though, adds to some concern. And Trey Sermon is still there. Maybe they like him more this year. Maybe he figures some things out. So all these things are a little concerning. And thanks for you. Appreciate you coming in and asking questions. Helps me get through all this. Couple other newsy items here. Just want to touch on Nick Foles. Looks like he's going to be back up at the Colts. That's interesting. T.Y. Hilton talked about that a little bit. Still plans to play this season, but we don't know where. Talked about the Dalvin Cook story a little bit. Dolphins expect Raheem Mostert to be ready week 1. That's a backfield that I'd be. There have been. So Scott Kobe wants to know if there's been any updates on James Robinson. There have been none. Mike Dempsey, again, my co-host on Sirius. By the way, we'll be on later today, 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern time. If you want to dial it in, Fantasy Sports Radio on Sirius XM. We'll be covering the NFC North, have beat writers from all those teams. And we'll get some of this information that I've been sharing with you, as a lot of this information comes from those sessions that when I talk about the local observers and what their thoughts are on players. So I think There have been no updates on Robinson. Mike Dempsey is there. He covers the team on a daily basis in Jacksonville, and they haven't heard much there. It was a partially torn Achilles, but not everyone is Cam Akers, so I think I would be, I would not be overspending on James Robinson. He's pretty cheap price right now, and I don't know that it's not worth a gamble if you're a gambling type. So, kind of the way Doug Peterson's talked, it sounds like he wants to use ETN as maybe not the primary back, or would like to use him in tandem with someone else, so maybe a heavier duty guy, and that could be Robinson, or who was it they drafted? Snoop. Oh, who is it? Is it Snoop Connor? Yeah, they drafted Snoop Connor, who's kind of a big body guy. I want to look and see what I got the size. Yeah, 5'10", 200 plus pounds. So that's a guy that maybe is a player to watch as we get closer. But ETN was super productive in college. He scored a lot of touchdowns. He's not bad. Robert, well, it depends on how the draft goes, but which position would you draft round one if you had the top 4 picks, middle round, or last 4 picks of round one? So round one, if I have in the top 4, if I have a top 4 pick. Oh, it does. It kind of depends almost totally on how things play out. But my top 4 picks right now are, pretty standard. It's going to be Jonathan Taylor. I like, and then depending maybe on the format a little bit, but any one of the I like Christian McCaffrey. I'm still willing to take that chance. There are people who are not willing to take that chance. He's missed 23 games the last 2 years, but when he does play, he tends to get 30 points a game. Again, Bill Barnwell makes a pretty good case for why that'll never happen again. We'll see. Derrick Henry, I think, is also in that mix for me. Barnwell, not a big fan of him either, but I think he's built a little different. So I'm wanting one of those backs with the first 4. Cooper Kupp does get in the conversation sometimes for me. Even with a great deal of aggression, he would still easily outscore all the rest of the wide receivers in the league. If you want to make that argument for Justin Jefferson, because of the offense that's coming in there, he'll play a role similar to Cooper Kupp. He's a younger, maybe more dynamic player. Then sure. He could go in there. The middle of the round, I think are the guys. Joe Mixon is the guy that's grown on me. That's falling maybe to the later part of the round, so you don't have to draft him. Najee Harris for the workload. I think you start looking at Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp in that middle area of that round as well. And late in the round, kind of the leftovers of running back. That's gonna, I kind of just let it fall to me and see who is still there of the top guys. And when I say the top guys, I don't want to. It's it's been pretty consistent. I want to say that. So if you just go to let me just go to the last draft I was in, because I think that's convenient and timely. And you look at the way the board lays out. I think the same guys I've seen in this board are the same guys I see in every board. And those guys, well, maybe one outlier. So it's Taylor, McCaffrey. Dalvin Cook went a little earlier. He generally lasts till later in the round in my experience. Kupp, Jefferson, Henry, Najee Harris, Austin Eckler, Jamar Chase, Joe Mixon, Devontae Adams. I see him going more in the second. I see DeAndre Swift a little bit. Javonte Williams is in the first round here. I see him falling more into the second. You're seeing Travis Kelce. If you look at the current average draft position, which I thought is a little bit surprising in the overall and best ball, in the best ball 10s. Not quarterbacks, everybody. Let's try that again. The current is Taylor, Cooper Kupp, Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry. This is a pretty good representation of what I'm seeing. Austin Eckler, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Najee Harris, Devontae Adams, Dalvin Cook, Javonte Williams, Joe Mixon at 12. Seeing Travis Kelce push up against there. Deebo Samuel right up against there, Stephon Diggs. But I think DeAndre Swift, I see him going a little higher than he is, 17th overall here. But I think that's a pretty fair representation, that one. So, whether you like Devontae Adams that much, you can move Dalvin Cook up. Javonte Williams, I'm really seeing go more in the second round, but this is a pretty fresh ADP. So, I think you one of the things that we can get caught up in the first round is I have the first pick, I have to take this guy. Well, if you really like a guy and you have the first pick and you like a different guy, well, should you be a prisoner to what the world wants you to take, or should you take the guy you want to take? Well, it's your damn team. You take the guy you want to take. If you like Cooper Kupp first overall, if you like Jamar Chase first overall, I'm not doing that, but if you want to do that, that's the only chance you're going to have to get that player if you're not in an auction draft, right? So, give it that little thought. I would pick Harris over Cup with the 5th pick probably about half the time. And that's the other thing. Like if I'm in a single draft, I'm probably taking the safe workload and Najee Harris, a young back that I think is going to get, north of 300 touches again this year. Yeah, probably so. Even if they try to dial back, he's still going to be heavily used. So I would. But, if you like that, if you like Cup a little better, I mean, again, even with a ton of regression, he's still going to, outpace everybody else. And again, if you thought Justin Jefferson, I mean, I can make my argument for Justin Jefferson too. So this is really, a personal preference thing. I mean, I know how I would do it. I tend to play it, are you drafting for upside in the first round and you're going to mitigate the risk later? Or are you drafting for a solid play and then you're going to take your chances later? I think that's kind of where you're at, and you have to decide that lane for yourself. What is my preference on drafts, redraft, or auction salary cap? I mean, I'd love every draft to be an auction salary cap draft. I just don't have time to do as many of those as I do with the others. They take a long time. And so if you have one draft every year, I would want it to be an auction draft. I mean, I want a chance to get every damn player. Every player I want, I have a chance to get if I want them. And if I manage my finances correctly. So, but at least I can be in the running for them. Whereas like what we were just talking about here, if you got the 5th pick, well, you're going to miss out on an opportunity to get 4 guys that you probably like it a hell of a lot. So there you have that. Brian Larkin after Cooper Kupp. Yes, that is the correct answer, Scott Kobe. It will be Allen Robinson. Dennis Fenton, I love stacking running backs, elite tight end in the first 4 to 5 rounds, and grabbing A-Rob as my wide receiver 1 in round 6. I think that's fair. I think that's so I was surprised early on. I didn't see him climb up the ADP as fast as I thought he would. Allen Robinson, we're talking about here, to Dennis Bennett's point in the chat. And he still hasn't risen up as high as I thought he would. And I guess, the argument is he a second receiver? I was checking out Mike Clay's projections. Let me look at him. A guy that I respect a lot, the effort he puts in. And what did he have for Allen? I mean, he has Allen Robinson lower than I would have expected. It caught me by surprise a little bit. Where did he have him? I have to scroll way down. That's crazy. He has him at 43 right now. He has him with 114 targets, 68 catches. I mean, I'm higher on him than that. I'm way higher on him than that. So, I mean, I guess there's mixed opinion. I think he's proven to be quarterback proof over the course of his career. Last year was the really bad year that he had, and that's what we're all going to remember. But this is the best quarterback he's ever played with, and the best offense he's ever played in. And if you thought he was quarterback proof in the past, he doesn't need to be this year. So there's that. Okay, San Francisco Dynasty, Tyrod Taylor droppable or hold? Oh, Superflex Dynasty. Yeah, I think he's holdable. William, I would hold on to him just in case. I think that's, obviously they want Daniel Jones to succeed, but they obviously don't have a total confidence in that because they didn't pick up his 5th-year option. So, I think that's a fair hold in the Superflex. Robert, auction drafts are a lot of fun, but they're longer and fast moving. They're long and they require a little more attention, throughout the course of a draft. Like if you like to, party and snack and do all those things or whatever, maybe an auction draft is for you. You've got to be pretty focused and intent the entirety of the draft, and they can take a long time. I think it's worth the effort. I love auction drafts, but I just don't have time to do as many of them as I'd like. All right. We're almost wrapping up the hour. If you have a few more questions, get them in now. I'll remind everyone, SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio tonight, 5 to 7. Me and Mike Dempsey will be reviewing the NFC North. Tomorrow night, I don't know who we're reviewing, but at the same time, if you're interested, it'll be 5 to 7 p.m. And who will we be doing? It'll be the AFC West tomorrow. So there you have it. Monday night, we'll see if it's a mock draft Monday or whatever. Probably starting up with best ball. Next week, I'll be on Fantasy Dirt as well with Michael Fabiano on Thursday night. Next Saturday, there will be no live chat. Be no live stream next Saturday. I'm taking the day off. Deal with it, people. We'll see. Maybe we'll get someone to substitute for me. But for now, assume there's not going to be one until further notice. Watch your Twitter feeds. I'll let you know if what the case is. In the meantime, again, you can catch us, generally speaking, every Saturday, noon on this live stream. We'll be doing some mock drafting here. at different times, right? We'll be doing some like in the evenings and some in the daytimes, and try to see when some of you have time to do it. I haven't seen Matthew Whitfield out there, but if he is, happy birthday to him again. And so hit footballdiehards.com. We'll keep you up to date on everything you need to know there, including next week's plan. And we'll figure something out and let you know. You watch my Twitter feed, most importantly, on Saturday, and that'll give you some news of what's going on for sure. Beyond that, we're getting got a couple of because CD ends up a top 5 wide receiver. My thoughts, entirely possible. And I think more people are starting to draft him like that. I've seen him move up recently in drafts. My thoughts on Saquon for 2022. I'm not against Saquon. I think the volume is going to be there. Volume is what we should be chasing, and opportunities, but also you haven't seen him be the same explosive player he was as a rookie. So I don't know if he's lost it or not. I'm willing to, at the price he's going at, like 3rd round, early 4th round, I'm willing to chase the volume there and hope that he can come around a little bit. So there you have that. By the way, if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, you should do that. You should hit the like button or dislike button if the move moves you, and hit the notification bell. Don't miss out on any of the content. We'll be ramping it up as the season goes on. I'm going to try to be doing a lot more on this channel during the season this year. Some instant reactions to things and developments, events, news, etc. With some really short videos. You always have the injury videos, etc. throughout the season. The live videos, Jamie Calandro doing some of the DFS content. John Laub doing some DFS content during the season as well. Emil Cadlick, you'll catch on there quite a bit also. So lot going on as we head into the season. For now, I'm going to get back to work. Magazine time is upon us. Get those things cranked out for you. You should look for those. If you want to go pre-order, go to the footballdiehards.com website. Go to the order now. Get your pro forecast, your draft book, your cheat sheets magazine, your Football Diehards magazine. You also get that extended into the online subscription that takes you into the season and make sure you have all the latest rankings and everything. We realize, again, magazine is a snapshot in time. We build on that and we make it all better. It's fantastic. I endorse all that. All right, everybody. Have a great day and a great weekend. And if I don't see you next week, and I won't, if somebody doesn't, I'll be back the week after, and I'll miss you terribly.